right. Well, Amber, Elaine, it's been a while. Shake it off, Elaine. Shake it off.
You mean it's been a while since you logged in and we're waiting to start?
No, I meant it's been a while since I had you on the show. I'm trying to start the goddamn thing.
I'm sorry.
With my welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so happy to be back.
Elaine always says that. Thanks for having me. Yes, thank you for being here. Amber, thank you for being here, Elaine. Should we dive into this case?
Yes.
Okay, a fair warning tonight. This is not pleasant, and it's not lighthearted at all. It's very bad and creepy and sinister and gruesome and sad and wild, all wrapped into one ball of mystery.
Wow.
So, dummy. Listener discretion is advised. But today we're going to be talking about the murder of Oakey Kite.
Okay.
And Amber already shared that she has not heard of this case. Have you, Elaine?
Nope. I'm not familiar.
Okay. Well, let me go ahead and show you our victim. So you have an image of your mind of him. This is Oakey Kite. So this is Al. He went by Al. Before we get into the events of the case, I just want to give you a quick background about Al. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So Oakey Albert Al Kite, he went by Al, was 53 years old. He was born on May 7th, 1951 in Nash County, North Carolina, to his father, Oakey Albert Kite Sr., and his mother, Edith Davis. And he had one sister named Barbara, and I'm not clear if it was an older or younger sister, but so he had one sister. Al's father was a well-known dog trainer where they were from. I wasn't sure exactly what his mother, Edith, did, but set 1970 at the young age of 48. So this would make Al about 18 years old at the time that his mother passed away, which, losing a parent, horrible, never easy. Can't imagine it at 18 years old, because I feel like 18, you're just starting to figure out the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, so, despite this hardship, he would go on to be a, pretty good guy. He graduated high school, Weldon High School, and then he went on to attend Atlantic Christian College, where he majored in business administration. He would go on to get a job for a company called Stone and Webster, which is an engineering services company. And he would work at this company for over 31 years. And this would take him actually everywhere, like all over the United States, on various projects that he had to work on. And also he went around the world too. He actually had a project that was in Algeria. So he spent some time there.
Wow.
On a personal note, Al married his longtime high school friend, a friend that he met in high school, by the name of Gail Kay. Yeah. They got married in 1976, and Gail had a daughter from a previous relationship named Julie, and Al would go on to be her stepfather. Now, sadly, Gail and Al divorced in 1988. So after 12 years of marriage. But by all accounts, this was an amicable separation, and Al remained close with Julie, his stepdaughter. So,
and they did not have any additional children?
They did not. Not that I've found. I don't believe so. So Al spent most of the 90s working on the West Coast, where he was handling finances for several different projects. And in 1998, he moved to Aurora, Colorado to accept a job, which is something he was really excited about because he loved being outdoors. He loved golfing, hiking, skiing, biking, anything basically outdoors. And Aurora, Colorado was a great place for that. So Al had a townhouse, which was and this was located at 2002 South Helena Street in Aurora. And I looked it up on Google Maps. It looks like a really quaint little area, nice tree-lined street. So a couple things were going through Al's mind. He thought maybe the 2 stories were starting to get to be too much space for him because he was a single guy and he loved the outdoors so much. He was either working or, spending time outdoors. So what did he need all this space for, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he ended up finishing up his basement. So it's like a standalone apartment that he could rent out.
Oh.
And so
Smart.
yeah, exactly. It was a good thing that he did this because in 2002, the company that he worked for, they decided to downsize. And sadly, after 31 years, he was let go.
Really?
I know, it sucks. Because everything I've read about him is that he was super reliable, like a great, great colleague, great employee. So, it happens sometimes, right? I mean, it's sad.
That's crappy, though.
Yeah.
Like, how far could he have been from retirement? They could have offered him an early package or something.
Right.
I know. But those are the details I know. It actually wasn't too long after this happened that Al found a new job. And this was at Carter Douglas, which is an engineering consulting firm. So right now we're in 2000. Let's go to 2004. Okay. Which brings us to when everything happens here with Al.
Okay.
A couple things happen. Firstly, he started dating a woman named Linda Angelopoulos. This is someone, apparently they had known each other for a couple years. I'm not sure exactly how, but the way that Linda described it when she was later interviewed was that they were, they would be at the same functions or like picnics or Christmas parties. So they must have had some sort of mutual acquaintance or friend. But anyway, they started dating. They got along really well. Things were a little bit casual, but that would change. But I'll get to that in a second. So that's the first thing in 2004 that changes for Al. The second thing is that Al had a tenant that was renting out his basement unit, right? Mm-hmm. And he decides that he's going to move out.
Okay.
So now Al is stuck with the task of finding a new tenant since this person wasn't going to renew their lease, right? So it's May of 2004, and Al posts some advertisements in the local paper that he has this unit for rent. And he's in the process of getting that taken care of. But I want to fast forward a little bit to Saturday, May 22nd. Okay, I want to fast forward to that day, and then we're going to go back and cover some other things. But let's go to May 22nd, which is a Saturday. So Linda, who is Al's new girlfriend, he drives her to the airport because she has a week-long trip that she's going on. And I'm not sure if this was for work or for whatever, but she had a trip and he drives her to the airport. And it's actually really, really sad, or it's really cute and sad. I actually want to play you a clip of her talking about the last day, the day that he drives her to the airport, if that's okay.
Okay.
How do you and Al meet?
I had known Al for a couple years prior to him and I starting to date. I'd see him at functions every now and then.
Oh, what kind of functions?
Christmas parties, picnics, things like that. It was another party that we had gone to. He and I ended up sitting at the table together and chatted the night away. He was a gentleman. Al just seemed to enjoy life, enjoy the people he was around. He always seemed to be laughing and smiling, and he was just an all-around nice guy.
you start up like a regular dating relationship with Al.
Yes. And he'd invite me over to his house. He would make dinner. He was a fantastic cook. I had been married before and had been divorced quite a few years from my kids' dad. I was hoping that I could have that special person in my life. And I thought he would be perfect. Al would be perfect. I believe he was the love of my life. And I never got that chance.
When was the last time you spoke with Al?
The day he took me to the airport, which is the day that everything happened. He had picked me up to take me to the airport. I called him at one of my stops.
Okay.
Because he and I, in the car, decided to become boyfriend-girlfriend. And so I called him from one of the stops, like, well, hey, boyfriend, how are you? He goes, oh, I'm fine. Hi, girlfriend, how are you? You know, and we had a nice little conversation. Then I got to Virginia Beach, which is like 3:30 Denver time.
Okay.
And I called him. And he was very quiet.
Yeah, I'm going to cut it off there, but I have a reason for cutting it off there. What I really wanted to just show you guys from that was just to give you a little sense of their relationship and where things were for them at the time. And that really almost made me start to cry because that was it's so sad. Like, she seems like such a sweet lady. And Al, I obviously didn't know him or hear him speak, but by seeing his photo, he just looks like a kind man. And that's what everybody said who knew him. So go ahead and react.
It just seemed very, very genuine from her perspective, and it is very heartbreaking.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like, I don't know any details of what happened to him yet, but she certainly was not involved. There's a lot of love and heartbreak from her end.
Heads up, things are going to get bad here. Okay. Fast forward. We talked about Saturday, May 22nd. Now let's fast forward to Monday, May 24th. Okay. This is a normal day, except for Al doesn't show up for work at Carter Douglas. This is really unlike him. He never would miss a day of work. And if he was going to be late, he would always call or let someone know. So his work, his boss, they call his cell, they call his home phone, and they get no response. And after trying this several times, they decided to call Barbara, who is Al's sister, because Al has her as his emergency contact. Al's sister, Barbara, actually lives in Virginia, so she's thousands of miles away.
Oh, wow.
But she tries calling her brother as well and gets no response. So only thing she could think to do was call the police and do a welfare check on Al. So the police go over there. They knock, and they knock over and over. They don't get any response. They break into the home. Everything looks normal until they go down to the basement. And it's there that they find a really gruesome scene. They find Al. He's laying down. Al had been hogtied, and he had been tortured for hours before he was ultimately killed.
Oh my God.
He definitely suffered. It was not an easy death. Like I said, he was bound. He'd been hogtied. He was tortured for hours. Whoever did this to him used sharp instruments to torture him. And ultimately what killed him was him being stabbed 22 times.
Oh my God.
Holy cow.
So they theorize that this murder occurred on the same day that Al took Linda to the airport. So that's Saturday. And they find him on Monday.
Wow.
Yeah. So this all leads back to, I'm going to go back now, to a prospective tenant that Al had been speaking with in the lead up to his death or to his murder.
Mhm.
Okay. So I mentioned earlier that Al put an ad in the local paper and like to get the word out, right?
Mhm.
That he had this apartment for rent. Okay. So that brings us to this guy by the name of Robert Cooper. So it was May 19th, 2004. This is 3 days before Al is murdered. This guy named Robert Cooper responded to Al's ad expressing interest in his apartment, and he wanted to move in almost immediately. He said that he was from the East Coast, and he was currently staying with his sister in the area, but was about to start a job or something at Wells Fargo Bank. And so he needed a place to live as soon as possible.
Okay.
And he was even willing to give Al a security deposit and the first month's rent just to get this thing moving. So Al told Linda about this guy, and she relayed these details about him being from the East Coast and all this stuff, right? There was a day that he came over, this guy, Robert Cooper, came over to look at the unit. And actually, Linda was coming over around the same time. Okay.
Mhm.
Now, Linda, when she got to Al's house, she had to use the bathroom really badly. So she runs in, right?
Yeah.
Goes to the restroom. By the time she comes out, this guy is walking away and doesn't say anything to her or acknowledge her. So she barely got a look at him. And Linda describes it as like, this guy did not want her to see him.
Oh.
But still, she was able to describe him and said that, he was kind of average looking. He was wearing a suit at the time, and he had brown hair. But again, she didn't get a good look at him at all. Here's what we're going to do. All right, we'll talk about the aftermath of the murder, okay?
Okay.
So not only did this killer brutally torture and murder Al, he did some crazy stuff afterwards too, all right? Creepily, he ate food from Al's kitchen. He
Weird.
took a shower in Al's master bathroom.
Okay.
He slept in Al's bed and even wore some of his clothing.
Weird.
He killed Al with his own kitchen knives, with Al's kitchen knives.
Mm-hmm.
And investigators found these knives in the sink, soaking in bleach.
Weird.
And he also, whoever did this, apparently cleaned the place up as to not leave any evidence behind, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The drain had also been plugged. There were between 6 and 12 knives. Also in the sink were Al's car keys. We'll get back to the car. And yeah, it was just soaking in bleach. Okay.
Okay.
Investigators didn't really know what to do with all this information because it seemed like it was personal.
Yeah.
Given the endless torture, right? But who would want to do this to him, right?
Or just a psychopath who, like, I'm wondering, were there any other deaths in the area that could imply a serial killer? So I could see a serial killer just randomly doing something like that.
Yeah.
We're too soon for theories.
No, that's okay. We'll get there. But moving on to later in the day, right? When he's found, his car is missing at this time. Okay. So they eventually find his car, which was a blue and gray GMC pickup truck. And it had been abandoned a little over a block and a half away from Al's residence.
Weird.
Now, when investigators searched the car, they found receipts from an ATM. So they go back to this bank. It was a Wells Fargo.
Oh.
And they pull surveillance footage, and they find some of this mysterious man using Al's ATM card at the bank.
Oh.
But sadly, the footage is rendered useless because the person at the ATM was wearing surgical gloves and a ski mask.
Oh.
So this person went to elaborate lengths
Yeah.
to conceal their identity and their crime. So the footage ended up useless. What's more interesting is that this person only withdrew $1,000 from Al's bank account.
Huh.
And it said that Al had way more money than that in his account. So police actually ruled out robbery as a motive for this because they figured, wouldn't you steal more?
Yeah.
If you had that opportunity. I mean, this guy's like laying in his bed and eating food in his kitchen. So like, if you got all this time, you have time to make multiple withdrawals.
Right.
Sure.
But yeah, so there's more details. Would you like to hear more details?
Yes.
And it just makes everything more creepy. So anyway, investigators continue to find clues. And they find in the garbage can in Al's kitchen a discarded rental application. This rental application appeared to be handwritten, and it had the name Robert Cooper. In addition to Robert Cooper, it had the stranger's mailing address, the social security number, and a phone number.
Oh.
Now, obviously, or maybe not obviously, Robert Cooper is not a real person. This is a fake name.
Mm-hmm.
So when they do some digging into this, they find that the address provided on the application, which was supposed to be this dude's sister's house, because he said he was staying with his sister, it ends up being a building on the University of Colorado's medical school campus. So it is not a residence.
Yeah.
The phone number was an active number. Oh, like let's hang on. Before I talk about the phone number, the social security number belongs to an elderly lady that has no connection. So obviously he just used this random social security number.
Okay.
And finally, which this one just boggles my mind, okay? The phone was an active phone, but it was a burner phone. So check this out. Police, they do a trace of this phone and Al's phone, because I forgot to mention that Al's phone was also missing from the scene along with his car. Now they did find his car, like I said. So they trace these phones and find they're still moving around. They're following these phones moving around Denver. So they think they've got a lead, right?
Oh, no.
Weird.
Yeah, they think they got a lead. So the burner phone and Al's phone, they're moving around the Denver area. Both phones. When they look into this further, they determine that 30 days prior to Al's murder is when the burner phone was purchased. And it was purchased at a 7-Eleven within Denver. It was not activated for 30 days, but when that's when this guy activated it. And they theorize that this person must have known that the 7-Eleven would have surveillance, but by that time it would be long gone. Meaning they purchased the phone and then waited to activate it until there could be no trace of the person who purchased it.
Yeah.
If you follow my drift.
So it was very calculated and very pre-planned.
Well, check this out, though. This is the part that really gets me. So the phones are moving around the Denver area, right? After Al is murdered. They're not with the killer. What this guy did, he abandoned the phones in a part of Denver that was known for its transient and homeless population.
Oh.
So when they found and tracked down these phones, they were in the hands of people that were like homeless and just happened to find the phones.
Yeah.
So this guy thought the hell out of this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And I just got chills.
Okay.
So what do you guys even think of this so far? I'm going to pause just right now.
I don't even know. This person, even like you said before, it had to be something personal. I mean, if they're buying a phone 30 days before they activate it and going around, you know, wearing his clothes and sleeping in his bed, and that's not just like random rage, like you denied me this apartment, now I'm gonna.
But he didn't even deny it. He was going to move in.
Right.
That's the thing.
Yeah. I still feel like this sounds like psychopath serial killer behavior. Like, I haven't fully wrapped my mind around it. I developed a theory, but like if someone wanted to just brutally kill someone because they had that desire, I feel like this would be the way to do it because now they have an empty apartment to do it in. And they would do some pre-planning to try to cover their tracks. Like serial killers do a little bit. They don't just randomly kill because they want to be able to keep killing. So they have to cover their tracks.
No, you're right. So there's a few more details. I do want to get to that. I mean, Elaine, what you're saying about your theory, I want to get to that.
Okay.
But I just want to talk about a few more things that happened before the murder, which you guys may find interesting. So Al was not the only person that this Robert Cooper fella was like, he was looking at other apartments.
Oh.
Okay. So we know that Linda saw him very briefly that day she came over and used the bathroom, but then by the time she got out, he was like walking away.
Yeah.
There was a local professor who happened to be from the University of Colorado. She was renting out a property, and a man that was matching the same description met with her to discuss this property. Now, I think when Linda saw him, so when Linda originally talked to Al about this guy, some other information Al gave her was like, he's like in his 40s, he had brown hair, he was like 5'8", 5'10", and Al said that he walked with a limp and he carried a cane.
Interesting.
Now, this other woman, this professor, the physical description matches, but she said the guy didn't have a limp and he didn't carry a cane. And she thought that he was speaking also with a Romanian or Eastern European accent.
Oh.
And apparently this professor was very familiar with the different dialects of Romanian.
Okay.
So there's that. And we'll get to that. We'll cover that a little bit later. But the same guy approached several renters in the weeks that led up to him responding to Al's.
Oh.
and at least 3 of them said that they interacted with him, and they all described him having different characteristics. So one person said he spoke with a Romanian accent. Another person said, essentially, it's like this guy was putting on different. I can't even think. To me, it's almost like this guy was trying to pull off the perfect murder, and he did a damn good job.
Yeah.
If you're going so far as to, he thought of everything. He's thinking, if somebody interacts with me, well, let me change up certain things so nobody can quite tell.
Yeah.
Because one person said he spoke very quietly and had a typical American sounding voice. Other people said he had accents.
Interesting. Yeah, I think he was trying to make it harder to connect him with all of those people, which was a smart move if he wanted to not be caught.
One thing that's very interesting, which would be the second connection to the University of Colorado medical school, I think, is one of the renters that one of the renters that this Robert Cooper guy visited, right? Apparently, this renter had only advertised their property in the library of the university.
Oh.
They did not put it in the newspaper or anywhere else except for the library. So that's kind of a big clue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That maybe this person was affiliated with the university in some way.
Maybe.
Oh, I should mention that another person, a renter that he visited, the woman said this guy made her incredibly uncomfortable, that she just got a horrible feeling from him, that he barely said anything, but he seemed to be like examining the windows. And she just got a bad vibe from him.
Ew.
Creepy.
So all of these other renters that he visited, were they all on their own personal properties where they were living like above it or below it?
You know what? That's a good question. I don't know.
I just wonder, because then that would go with my theory of like, this is a really good strategy of having a victim nearby and then you having a place to kill them.
Or maybe that's why he targeted Al, because he knew he ended up figuring out that Al lived upstairs.
Yeah.
And maybe the others didn't. I don't know. It doesn't mention where these other ones lived. It's just their properties that they were renting out.
Does it say if those other renters, if they like lived by themselves too, or
No.
they had family?
It doesn't have any information about, and maybe that's something I could find if I dug a little deeper, but it doesn't say particularly, the lifestyle or things like that of these other people.
It is interesting because serial killers tend to target women, I believe.
That's true.
I guess.
The sexual aspect of it.
Yep, and they're easier to dominate. Because they're just, I mean, if this is a male killer, which it's probably this Robert Cooper guy.
Mm-hmm.
I forgot what I was going to say about that.
No, it's okay.
I lost my train of thought.
I get what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
Where do we go next from here? Okay. Let me tell you guys about another case that may or may not be connected, but it is something that's brought up. Okay?
Okay.
There's a guy named Lee Hall. Okay? And he's an employee of Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory. And the Lawrence Livermore National Lab is on the West Coast in California.
Okay.
So this guy was an incredibly private guy. He'd been married and divorced twice, and he had a son, right? But nobody at his job knew about anything about his life. He seriously only focused on work when he was at work, and they knew nothing about his personal life. The only thing that they really knew was that he liked to hang out at this golf course or whatever. Anyway, another thing that's wild, they did some research into this guy, Lee Hall, and they found he had no outgoing phone calls, personal or personal emails for like years.
That's a little weird.
I know, like, dude didn't order food or anything, or like. What's more is his son, Michael, who was a real estate developer that lived in Oregon. He was like ignoring calls from his son.
Huh.
I don't know why. But anyway, so in 1998, Lee Hall, and this is, by the way, from the Unresolved podcast, this information, just shouting out my source here. So this guy, Lee Hall, he was part of a team at the lab, and they discovered a flaw with the project that they were working on. And this was like a very large-scale project. The purpose was to achieve nuclear fusion. It had to do with a laser's alignment or something. But anyway, this equipment they were dealing with was really, really expensive. So any fixes that were required, any mistakes, could potentially cost a lot of money. Like, I'm talking millions of dollars. The project was over budget. There was a lot of pressure coming down on them to get results from the project. So basically, this guy Lee Hall's concerns, they fell on deaf ears. But eventually, in 1999, the fix for this whatever error that Lee Hall was recommending ended up being approved. And the fix was going to cost around $1 million. Around this time, also, he received a pay raise.
Oh, good.
Okay, so about a month later, though, which is not good, on October 20th, 1999, Lee fails to show up for work. And so some of his coworkers, long story short, some of his coworkers show up at his house. They find that the gate to his house had been left wide open, and the door was unlocked. And apparently this Lee guy was incredibly diligent about keeping things in order, till they thought that was weird. They eventually find Lee's body lying face down on his bedroom floor.
Oh.
At a very first glance, it looked like he's just had fallen or something, but basically they discovered that he had been brutally beaten and stabbed.
Oh.
But the house showed no sign of struggle, other than the fact like the gate and all that was left open. Nothing was disturbed. So they theorized maybe that this guy, or that Lee knew whoever it was.
Yeah.
Okay. Why is this related to Al Kite? Well, Al Kite actually worked at Lawrence Livermore Laboratory at the same time as Lee Hall.
Oh.
And similarly, Lee's vehicle was found a block away from his home. So just like Al's would be found 5 years later.
That is weird.
Mm-hmm.
And like, why were their cars found so close to the home? I find that kind of strange. Why would the killer drive it a block or a block and a half away and leave it there?
Well, for Al, you mean?
For either one of them.
Well, for Al, so the guy drove to the ATM in Al's vehicle.
Oh, and then left it near the ATM?
No, well, he drove it back because what happened was he took the keys back to Al's house.
Yeah, but
and
why
put
didn't
them
he
in the sink?
Why didn't he just leave the car at the house? Like, why did he abandon it just a block away?
Yeah, I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, maybe to throw investigators off even more. I don't know.
Well, that could
It's a good question.
Or maybe it's easier to be sneaky if you're walking instead of driving a car into a driveway.
Maybe that's where they parked their car.
Oh, maybe. Oh, and then
Yeah, they
did
would have had to get
Found
away
their own
somehow.
car back to the house. I don't know.
That's a good point. That might be.
You know what else this reminds me of? Has anyone heard of the case of Lindsay Buziak?
No.
I know you might have, Amber.
Didn't we? Maybe we didn't do a podcast about it. But that's what she's the real estate agent, right?
Yeah, so Lindsay Buziak, she was a real estate agent.
Thought we
Just
talked about
real briefly. I think we have talked about it, but I don't think we've
Maybe not,
actually
like,
done the
officially.
podcast on it.
Yeah.
So she was killed in 2008. And just a very quick summary of what happened. She was fairly new to the real estate world, and she got a call from somebody using an accent that wanted to see a particular home that was like worth $1 million. And they called her on her personal cell phone, which she thought was a little odd. But the person said, "Oh, I was referred to you by so-and-so, like," and this ended up being a friend of hers, right?
Okay.
So she calls this friend, but this friend is like out of the country or something on some trip, and so she can't get a hold of her. But anyway, she sees the $1 million and the commission she's going to get from this sale, and she takes it.
Yeah.
Long story short, she goes to the viewing. She meets the people. It's a couple. And she's brutally killed. They stab her like a bunch of times.
House?
At
the
the
$1 million
house.
house? Wow.
Yes. And then they flee. There were witnesses that saw them like arrive and leave.
Oh.
But then anyway, they determined that the phone that was used to call her to set up this appointment was a burner phone that was purchased like a month or so before. So that this gives me those kind of vibes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So before we talk about like our summaries or our final thoughts. Okay. So later in the month of May in 2004, Al Kite's remains were sent to his hometown of Halifax, North Carolina. A funeral was held for him on June 2nd, 2004. Obviously, this was huge for his loved ones. They had a really, really difficult time wrapping their heads around this. But he was buried in the church cemetery in his hometown, where he still is resting. Oh, no, there was one more thing that I need to tell you, and then I'm done. So there was DNA left at the scene.
Oh.
And interestingly enough, they were able to create a DNA profile of what this person could have looked like or where their ancestry could be. And they did determine that his heritage could be of Eastern European descent.
Oh.
Also, and I just found out about this recently because there was a show about this, and I think it was David Holes or something.
Paul Holes.
What?
Is it Paul Holes? It looked like Paul Holes on that clip.
That was Paul Holes. God, you're so good, Amber. Paul Holes. And Paul Holes is someone. He's a cold case investigator, or he's a former cold case investigator. Anyway, he did a show on this case. Apparently, the way that, and I have a hard time understanding this, but the way that he was hogtied apparently was very unique and was similar to the way that people in the Turkish Hezbollah would hogtie people. And apparently they're like a Kurdish Islamic extremist organization that rose to power in Turkey. So I don't know.
What the heck?
if that has anything to do with it, I don't know why this person would target Al. I mean, don't terrorists usually want to like brag about their stuff? Or maybe they thought, I'm going to leave enough clues where you guys can tell this was done, but you're never going to catch me type thing. Anyway, that's the last thing I wanted to say. But they're really hopeful that this DNA profile could lead to something based on ancestry, or like they're hoping one day that they'll get a link and they'll be able to find out who did this. But this was 2004. So no, we're coming up on almost 20 years now.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'll leave that there. I'm having a hard time personally trying to figure out. It seems like a lot of work for this not to be a personal targeted attack. But then again, he was meeting with other renters. So it does lend, this guy wanted to kill someone. Maybe
Yeah.
it wasn't specifically Al, but he definitely wanted to kill someone.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it was specifically Al. Because you didn't talk about any potential enemies that he had, but it sounds like by all accounts, he was a very kind guy. He didn't have any. He's not the type of guy that someone, and like to put someone through that level of torture, he'd have to be a pretty terrible guy in some regard.
Very sadistic.
So I don't think it was personal. I think this guy is just a psychopath who had fantasies about hog-tying a man and torturing him. And he was seeking out a situation where he could go through with it. And I think this one, like, it would be easy enough to lure this guy down into this apartment to do it. He had a girlfriend, but they only decided they were boyfriend, girlfriend on the phone, like the day he was murdered, right?
Well, it was actually, in the car on the way to the airport. But then when they were talking to each other later, it was like, oh, hey, girlfriend.
Yeah. So the
They
guy
had been
who
casually seeing each other.
Okay. So the guy who did it knew he didn't have an official significant other or wife of any kind. No children. Like, how old was he? How old would he have been in 2004? Like in his 50s?
You're talking about Al?
Yeah.
He was 53 years old in 2004.
Okay. So I wonder if his parents were he lost one parent when he was young.
Yes, I'm not sure when he lost his father, or I mean I think I would assume that I haven't read when his father passed away, or if his father passed away, but he's not mentioned, and his emergency contact was his sister, right? So
yes, but she
Can I show
lived
you
very
guys-
far away. So like all of this points to he doesn't have a lot of people in the immediate vicinity he's very close to. So he's someone, people aren't going to be looking for him immediately.
Can I show you guys one more clip, and then we can be done? I'm just curious. I just want to show you this, and then.
Also, are you going to show us the rest of that clip you started?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to ask, because
No.
do you know if something happened? Because she started to say, like, when she talked to him later, he was quiet.
Oh, I'm an idiot.
something
That's another
happened?
detail. That's another detail I left out. Idiot.
You're really good at editing. We can talk about it now.
It's fine. So what she was saying basically was she gets cut off. I'm not going to play that clip because it's weird. It like gets cut off at a weird place. But basically what she says is that she called him once when she was on her layover, right?
Yeah.
Because it wasn't a direct flight, I guess. And that's when he sounded like really upbeat and cheery, and he was all like, hey, girlfriend, or whatever. But she called him again when she landed at her final destination, and she said he seemed quiet and not really himself. Not like upset, but just quiet.
Okay.
And she says that, you know, she didn't want to pry. You know, she didn't know him super well. I mean, she knew him, but like, she's like, oh, if there's something wrong, you know, he would have said something. So she just kind of dismissed it. But now, after the fact, she wonders if that guy wasn't there.
Oh, sure.
God. That's
you imagine?
horrifying.
And so they're like, I read something, a comment somebody put on the video, and they were saying like, it may seem extreme, but my husband and I have a code word.
Oh.
And she's like, I know it's extreme, but you know, like this happened. So they have a code.
Probably would never need to use it, but
Yeah.
And so basically the code is you have something with your loved ones where they, no questions asked, call the police immediately if you use this phrase. So maybe you guys should do that with your loved ones.
Yeah. I'm kind of thinking.
It sounds absurd.
Yeah, because I mean, you probably will never need to use it.
Hopefully not.
Yeah.
But
You never know.
Anyway,
No,
that's speculation, though. That's speculation but can you imagine he's being tortured and, you know, he picks up this call or whatever and, I don't know. All right, watch this clip.
Okay.
A cold-blooded killer poses as a renter. Police say he had no intention of ever living in the home. He killed the homeowner, not for the money. They believe he did it for the thrill.
It's been 15 years since Al Kite was tortured and brutally murdered. And tonight, Liz Gilardi shows us how new technology is bringing new hope to this case.
He was just selected by this killer.
Targeted and then tortured.
His hands were elaborately tied to his ankles.
Stabbed 22 times.
Cut his throat, almost severed his head.
Details about a crime scene that are just as vivid as the day Detective Tom Sobieski responded.
A lot of trauma. The coroner felt it went on for hours.
Police found Oakley Al Kite Jr. in the basement of his Aurora townhome on May 22nd, 2004. He never showed up for work. His girlfriend couldn't believe it when she heard the word murder.
The first thing I thought of was the roommate.
It's the first thing investigators thought of too.
So we knew it was the renter who was probably our suspect. And he probably killed him with his own kitchen knives.
Detectives found those knives in his sink, sitting in bleach, along with a key that Al gave to the renter.
Yes.
Girlfriend Linda Angelopoulos remembers Al taking out an ad in the paper listing his basement for rent. And she remembers something odd about a man who looked at the place.
The night the guy came over, I also came over.
Linda walked in, went to the bathroom, and he was gone. Looking back now, she doesn't think the man wanted her to see him.
Well, yeah, I think that's what happened. I mean, he's walking out the door, didn't even turn around to say hi, bye, or anything. And how long does it take to go to the bathroom and wash your hands?
That's not all. Investigators found out the renter used the name Robert Cooper. And they found out something else that might make your skin crawl.
So we don't know what selection criteria he used to pick his victim, but we knew he met with Al and he met with some other people. He met with older women, different locations, some were houses.
A hand-picked victim, a brutal killing. They believe it was all planned out. Police say the man showered at the home after the murder, then used Al's car to drive to a nearby ATM where he took out $1,000.
I'm sure a lot of people think about the way that he died and what he had to go through. For what? For what? For the thrill of it? I don't think it was for the $1,000 he took. I think it was for the thrill of it.
Surveillance video from the ATM was useless. The suspect was wearing a ski mask and surgical gloves.
We don't think robbery was the motive. We think that the suspect was looking for someone to kill, actually.
Along the way, the suspect led police astray as they chased cell phone records for a burner phone purchased at 9th and Colorado. A phone that was ultimately left on Colfax then ended up in the hands of homeless people. But 15 years later, detectives still have hope that DNA found at the murder scene could lead to the suspect, thanks to new technology.
We have a sketch of what we think the suspect may look like from his DNA profile. And most recently, I've been working with the FBI. They have an investigative genealogy unit.
Through genetic genealogy, they can analyze the suspect's DNA in an attempt to trace his family tree and ultimately find him. It's how investigators in California found the Golden State Killer.
They're scientists and experts with the FBI can narrow that search down.
Detective Sobieski says until that happens, this case is always on his mind.
I think it's because Al was such a true victim. Everybody said he was a really nice guy.
A future stolen by a renter turned killer.
We're gonna find him. They're gonna find him. I just know it.
Liz Gilardi, Denver 7.
Yeah, that's horrifying, but I hope that they find him. It does sound promising having DNA of the guy.
Mm-hmm. That's what I think too. Especially with all of the genealogy, used lately, I feel like it could be solved.
Oh, yeah.
I agree. And I hope it is, because whoever this is, they need to pay for this, because this is one of the most horrifying things. Just to be tortured and be such a nice human being, and that's the end that you come to. And I can't even imagine being his girlfriend or his sister or any of his friends. It's just like what was the purpose behind this?
Right. It does sound very much like that. Is it Murder by Numbers or whatever, that movie where they just wanted to kill somebody just to see if they could get away with it?
Yeah.
I mean, but when you look at all the effort that was put into this, it's just wild to me.
And that makes me wonder if there's more cases that are at all similar. Because it's been 20 years. I don't think this guy's just sitting around not murdering. If he had it in him to go to that extent and torture him that much, and I just don't feel like that type of person is going to be satiated by just one. Well, and maybe there was the other one you said that happened that was somewhat similar.
That was 5 years prior.
Okay. But yeah, I just wonder if they have compared to other cases, if there are ones that are in any way similar.
That's a great, great point. And if any people listening have any cases that come to mind, I'd be interested to hear about them. But right now, nothing comes to mind. I don't think the Lindsay Buziak case is the same sort of thing. I mean, there's something else going on there. That's a whole other thing we could do.
Because that was a couple, you said? It was 2 people that killed her?
There were 2 people, that showed up.
Wow.
Yeah. And the caller said that they were looking for a place, her and her husband. So.
Because except for the fact that there were 2 of them, it was somewhat similar.
Somewhat. But I have other thoughts on that case.
Okay.
But that's for another time.
We should do that one another time. That one.
We can do that one. It is. It's another complex one, but I have thoughts about it. So it's similar but different, in my opinion.
Okay.
But yeah,
this one is so upsetting because I feel like there's just a terrible, senseless killer out there who's been free now for 20 plus years.
That's true. It's true.
And that's terrible.
It's terrible. But yeah, whoever did this was really smart and really just thought of everything.
Yeah.
So if only this person could have used those skills for good.
Right?
Yeah, but sorry to ruin your night, but that's the case of Oakey Al Kite. May he rest in peace.
Yeah.
Any final words?
It's just confusing.
Yeah. It's interesting that you mentioned that he used a certain kind of knot, hog tie style knot that's used by a terrorist organization.
That just happens to be in Eastern Europe.
Yeah. But you're right. I don't think this was an act of terrorism because he would have filmed himself or something. Like typically they don't just do this in private.
Okay.
All right, check.
He was just like fascinated by that. And that was
maybe he was just very interested in it.
Okay, check this out. Oxygen.com. Headline: Was Colorado murder victim killed by man linked to Turkish Hezbollah? On May 24th, 2004, police in Aurora, Colorado were called to the home of beloved project manager Oakey Kite. Kite, a 53-year-old divorcee, lived alone just a few miles outside of Denver and was reported missing by coworkers after he didn't show up to the office that morning. When police entered Kite's townhouse, nothing appeared, blah, 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 out of place. Details I've already given you guys.
Yeah.
Quote, the bottoms of his feet were up in the air with bindings, and they were bruised. The coroner felt the torture went on for several hours, Aurora Police Detective Tom Sebeski told investigator Paul Holes. Some of the injuries were things I'd never seen before, Sebeski continued, like a knife into above the eye, into the ears, and down through the shoulders. Just a crazy amount of torture. Okay, we talked about the knives and the bleach in the sink. We talked about them stealing money. Blah, blah, blah. His alias. Background information. I'm just trying to get to the point where they talk about this Hezbollah thing.
But if he's intrigued by that kind of thing, he's probably seen videos from terrorist organizations and has watched them and is probably trying to copy them because he thinks it's cool or whatever.
Hey, this isn't funny, but I find this interesting. Holes also consulted with binding expert. That's a title, binding expert. Anyway,
I didn't know that was a thing.
Lindsay Philpott and intelligence analyst Julie Quinn for insight into the binding and torture elements of the case. Because of the way Kite was hogtied, Philpott theorized the killer, quote, could be a sailor of some sort, somebody from the Coast Guard, somebody who's had some experience in wrapping things tightly. Kite was bound around the upper arm, above the elbow, and twice above the knee, which seemed unusual to Philpott, since when someone is hogtied, the bindings normally, quote, only go from the wrist to the ankles. As Sebeski mentioned, the binding method exposed the bottoms of Kite's feet, which were covered in wounds and bruises, to his attacker. While Holes had never seen this type of torture in any previous cases, Quinn explains there is a form of foot beating called falaka that is common in Turkey. Quote, it's a way to extract information, and also it's basically a beating to maintain compliance, Quinn said. Falaka is typically performed with a cane or switch, and in the bleach-filled sink at Kite's house, the offender also placed a honing rod, which is made of steel and used to realign the blades of knives. The honing rod would be very comparable to the instruments they used when they carried out the falaka, Quinn told Holes. Quinn noted that the way Kite was tied is very specifically linked to a group called the Turkish Hezbollah, adding that hog tying was the organization's, quote, signature, and that its members were known for their torture tactics. The Turkish Hezbollah disbanded in the early 2000s, and many of the members were able to flee the region to avoid capture, according to Quinn. And so they linked the killer's ancestral information to the Balkan region. And then you have the whole thing where somebody said that he had maybe a Romanian accent.
Yeah.
So it's all very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In conclusion, what the hell?
The guy who said that it sounded like a Romanian accent, did you say he was very familiar with accents?
Yes. So
So he probably was not faking a Romanian accent, or that guy would have been able to pick up on it.
Based on the blood test results, meaning his DNA, right? The bindings, the torture, and the possible Romanian accent, Hull speculates that Cooper could have been a member of the Turkish Hezbollah who carried out torture on behalf of the group before immigrating to the U.S. Quote, when he moves away from the Turkish Hezbollah, he's now not getting that gratification of torturing somebody. And so now he becomes that predator. Al just happened to be the person that he chose, Hull's theorized. And so basically right now, the police department, they submitted his DNA for genealogy, and they've given the results to the FBI, and they're trying to work on building a family tree in hopes that they could identify Robert Cooper. And I think, like you guys were saying before, that's very possible. Yeah, so that's all I've really got.
That was a crazy story.
It was crazy.
The events, yeah.
You said it was going to be crazy, and you did not lie.
Well, I guess I'll just close it out by saying anyone with information about the murder of Al Kite should reach out to Detective Thomas Sebeski of the Aurora Police Department, and he can be reached at 303-739-6710. One minute and 43 seconds is dedicated to my number one fan. Thanks, Dad. I love you and I miss you. This podcast has been approved by Skipper the Cat. Right, Skippy?